Okay, this is one of the PCO series session, and it's about the basic of organic certification, why and get organic certify. My name is Mabell Rivas. I'm the certification director at Pennsylvania Certify Organic. We're an accredited certification agency based here in Central PA. Before we start, I'm just going to describe how the session is going to go. I know that this is a very tough hour to sit down and go through a very long PowerPoint. So in the attempt of not allowing you to fall asleep, what we're going to be doing is Heather is going to be passing. Heather Donald is our moderator for the session. She's going to be passing out some pieces of paper that are color-coded based on categories. So if you're interested in knowing more about certification for crops, she's going to give you what color is that? A green piece of paper. And if you're interested in knowing more about livestock certification, she's, I'm guessing, yellow, because that's the color that we use for our physical folders in the office for livestock. And for processors, if there's people here interested in knowing more about processing, there is a pink piece of paper. And so as I'm giving my presentation here, write down your questions, and I want to have at least 30 minutes to just have a discussion, as opposed to just talking the whole time, and give you an opportunity to speak out your questions. So can I see a show of hands of, like, based on those categories, who is on the farming side, processing, livestock, just for kicks, just to stretch out? Livestock crops, is anybody here with? Okay. How about livestock? Dairy, poultry, or both? Pork. Oh, interesting. Okay. And how about processors? Okay. What type of process?
I'm with you already.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, so we're going to get started here. If there is anything that is not too clear, as you can hear, I'm not sounding like a native speaker, right? So I'm originally from Nicaragua, so it's okay to ask for clarifications. It's all expected. So, okay. Just a little introduction about PCO. Like I said, PCO stands for Pennsylvania Certified Organic. And actually, tomorrow, or what day is it? Tomorrow is February 4th of 1997 was when PCO was incorporated. So this year, we're celebrating our 15th anniversary. So happy birthday, PCO. We actually, yesterday, had a chance to have our annual meeting with our members. And we brought this beautiful cake and had the opportunity to sing happy birthday to our organization. A little bit more about PCO. Our office is located in the small town of Spring Mills. That's in the Penns Valley area. That is about 20 miles southeast of State College. And we certify operations all over the Mid-Atlantic region. And so that includes, of course, Pennsylvania is the main area that we cover. And then we're in other states such as Maryland, New Jersey, Virginia, Ohio, North Carolina, West Virginia, and even Washington, D.C. We actually certify the People's Garden. I don't know if anybody has heard about the People's Garden in Washington, D.C. That's an USDA-managed garden. It's a very tiny plot, but we are the proud certifier of that garden in Washington, D.C. Okay, so what does certified organic means? And I took this very brief definition from the Organic Trade Association's website, and they define it as, they say that it means that the item or the product has been grown accordingly to a strict, uniform standards that are verified by independent state or private organizations. We're talking here organizations such as PCO. So now, getting into the two questions that we're trying to address today. Why get organically certified? To be honest with you, I have been working in this industry for about almost 10 years. I could come up with a long list of reasons why I think you should all get organically certified, but I decided to just pick a couple of things and talk about those today. One is, of course, for environmental reasons. The more certified farmland, the more positive impact to the environment. And I was just reading this about this research done at the Rodale Institute that has shown that organic practices can remove about 7,000 pounds of carbon dioxide from the air and sequester it in an acre of farmland per year. Thus, Rodale estimates that if all 434 million acres of U.S. cropland were converted to organic practices, it would be the equivalent to eliminating 217 million cars. Isn't that amazing? And nearly 88% of all cars in the country today, and more than a third of all the automobiles in the world. I thought that was a very interesting finding of that research that deals with the impact of carbon dioxide and the effects to the environment. More reasons related to the environment. Undesirable substances. This is just to be a little bit conservative about what undesirable substances are. There is a long list of substances that are eliminated from farms and processing facilities through the organic practices. Consumer exposure. Organic food reduce consumer exposure to many substances as well. Worker health. Organic production and processing reduce worker exposure to many substances as well. And also, the second reason that I wanted to address is related to the economic aspects, economic reasons. The organic market is a consolidated market, and it continues to grow. I remember when I started my career in the organic industry in 1998. I was a very young person at that time, and naive, and I will say, and so I started hearing about all these new concepts, especially in Latin America. There were very new concepts about transitioning to organic and the benefits, the impacts that will have, and down there, people were really not thinking that converting to organic was the right way to do things because the industry that offers other alternatives were in a peak of their campaign down there, especially with coffee growers. And at that time, talking about organic agriculture, it was sort of a joke. And so it wasn't really uncommon to kind of be kind of, people would think that that you were crazy and this doesn't make sense because it was not a consolidated industry. People were not consuming organic as much as they're doing now. And so here are some statistics that I took from also the Organic Trade Association. They say that U.S. sales of organic food and beverages have grown from $1 billion in 1990 to $26.7 billion in 2010. I think this only includes food and beverages, but if they include non-food items, that is up to almost 29 billion. So that is very amazing. Sales in 2010 represented about 7.7% growth over 2009 sales. That's what when I say it continues to grow, the numbers are there. Experiencing the highest growth in sales during 2010 were organic fruits and vegetables, up to 11.8% over 2009 sales. So it's very interesting how in about 20 years the industry has consolidated and more consumers are becoming aware of the benefits of organic food and organic agriculture.
The question: who compiles the data?
The Organic Trade Association. They do surveys, And this is based on the latest. It was in 2011. So now the second question. So who must get organically certified? Who does not have a choice of saying, okay, I might or I might not? Certification is mandatory if you produce or handle products sold, labeled, or represented as organic. This is very important to understand that even if you are not putting a label in the product that says organic, or organically produced, if you are, let's say in a farmer's market, just handing a product that has not labeled, and you are saying this is organic, that's representing. So if you are not under the exemptions or exclusions, and then you must get certified organic. So who is exempt? Any operator that produces or makes less under $5,000 in annual sales is exempt of being having to be certified. However, that doesn't mean that they don't have to follow the rule. It's just that they are exempt from certification. Retail food stores are also exempt, and resellers of packaged products are excluded as well. Okay, so how to get organically certified? First, I will say definitely familiarize yourself with the regulations. And we're going to go into a little bit more deep in later in the presentation. I'm going to be giving you some main ideas and main tips on things to keep in mind when you are planning to start a transition period or apply for certification. Transition to organic production. This is for those operators or farm owners that have a land that has not been managed organically for the last 36 months. So if that's the case, and then you will have to start a transition period. Submit, and then once you are ready, you will have to submit an application. And in our case, in most certifiers, we call it the organic system plan, and we're going to talk a little bit more details about what needs to come with that organic system plan, what information you need to provide to the certifier. And after the organic system plan is submitted with the appropriate fees, and then we go through a preliminary review process. And then if we feel, or not feel, but if we determine that the organic system plan is certifiable, and then we are authorize an on-site inspection. On-site inspection happens once a year, once you are in the certification system. And then after that on-site inspection occurs, an inspection report is provided to the certifier by an independent inspector, and the certifier reviews that application along with the findings from inspection and makes a final decision. So that's kind of like in a nutshell the general steps of the process. Before I go into more details about the organic system plan and the inspection and all that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the National Organic Program and the organic standards in light of the idea of becoming more familiarized with the standards. Just a quick review of the timeline on how the National Organic Program was created and how the organic standards were set up or approved. So it all started in 1990 with the passing of the Organic Food Product Act, commonly known among the industry as OFPA. And so what this is the general law, which actually has to be passed by Congress and signed by the president. So that happened in 1990. In 1992, the USDA appoints the National Organic Standards Board, now known as commonly known as the NOSB, and establishes the National Organic Program. The National Organic Standards Board is the board that has given the authority to recommend which inputs or materials can be used or cannot be used or are allowed under the rule. The National Organic Program, it's a division of the USDA that issues standards, quote unquote, the rule, acts on advice from the National Standards Board, the NOSB, and establishes certification systems and accreditation systems. In this case, like I mentioned, PCO is an accredited certifying agency. And the job of the NOP is to go through that process. We are actually, this year, most certifiers are going through their 5-year renewal. Every 5 years, we get to renew our application to be accredited by the NOP. And also, the NOP handles compliance and enforcement. Just to give you an example of what this means is, okay, you as consumers go out there, pick up a product in the supermarket that you feel that is either being mislabeled or that you have reasons to believe that there is some fraud going on with any specific brand. There is a link in the National Organic Program's website where you can submit a complaint, and you can do that anonymous. You don't even have to give your name. And what they will do is they will do an investigation and take the necessary adverse actions, such as fines. Anybody who is mislabeling a product could be fined to up to $11,000 per package. So if you go out there and find out that someone is making some cheese and labeling as organic, and an investigation happens, and the NOP decides or agrees that there was fraud or that the product was being misrepresented, the NOP can give that operator a fine of $11,000 per package. So if they found, let's say, 11 packages of cheese, so that will be multiply that by $11,000. That can be a severe fine. So that's about the NSP and the National Organic Program. So in 1997, let's talk about the rule. 1997, USDA published the first proposed rule. Then in December of the year 2000, the USDA publishes the final rule, which is what we are currently using to base our decisions. PCO was accredited by the USDA in April of 2002. And the most current regulations, you can find those by going and browsing the National Organic Programs website. And also, we have a link to that in our PCO website as well. Okay, so going back to the main steps, the application process. I already mentioned the Organic System Plan, or OSP. Like I mentioned before, the certifiers all provide these templates that the operators can fill out and to describe all the practices that that are taking place at the operation, and submit that to the certifier with the applicable fees. And then besides that, the operator agreement to identify responsible party and appropriate business structure. So all this is, okay, who is the authorized representative to manage the certification process, and how the business is structured. So in that application, first of all, of course, you have to describe all the practices. Here are a few examples for crops. Practices that are taking place to protect and promote biodiversity, tillage cultivation and crop rotation, pest management practices, procedures for obtaining organic seeds, livestock healthcare practices, storage practices, processing methods, etc. All of these things are actually laid out in the rule. So the idea is that the operator is in their organic system plan is telling you, okay, this is what I do to comply with these sections of the rule. Here are more examples of. This is very critical. The list of the substances used. Some people call them materials. Some people call them products. We do not like to call them products at PCO because it can get very confusing between of what is the actual final organic product versus an input that is being used to produce that product. This is about inputs, such as fertilizers, crop product production aid, pest control inputs, livestock feed additives, livestock healthcare products, post-harvest materials, processing aids for those processed products, cleaners and sanitizers. Those can be actually very difficult to to verify, just because with cleaners and sanitizers there are so many restrictions, and sometimes because the cleaner is not really touching the product, there is a fine line there on what can be allowed and what can add, and we had to work a lot with our operators on cleaners and sanitizers. Description of monitoring practices. Soil testing, what type of soil testing are you doing? For example, if you're using micronutrients, the rule says that some micronutrients are allowed as long as you can demonstrate that there is a soil deficiency for that micronutrient. So the best way to prove that is through a soil test, so doing soil tests and presenting that to the certifier. Monitoring soil moisture and water quality, if applicable, product quality testing, monitoring crop and pasture quality, pest monitoring, pesticide residue testing. I'm not going to be talking much about that, but there is a proposed rule that is supposed to be passing really soon, and which will require certifiers to do pesticide residue testing in a certain percentage of the certified products or operations that they handle or provide services. So that's kind of a new thing that is taking place this year. Management practices to prevent commingling and contamination. This is key. The National Organic Program regulations allow what we call parallel production, the production of organic and conventional. However, sufficient practices must be in place to prevent contamination or commingling coming from either those adjoining landfills that are not being managed organically, or the same goes for processors. Prevent commingling, contamination at the storage units while the product's being transported, etc. So, okay, this is kind of like, I don't know how to, what would be the best way to describe the record keeping issue. Anybody in the CERT team can pitch it, but record keeping is kind of like the one thing that it's the heart of the certification process. The certifier, really, we only get to the operation or to the farm once, maybe twice a year. And in those cases, those who are lucky to have an unannounced inspection, which we try to avoid as much as we can, but because of that fact, for us, it's very key to have good and detailed and clear records that demonstrate that you are definitely in compliance. Of course, when the inspector gets there and that's the on-site visit, the inspector can observe and determine that certain things are definitely in place. But there are certain things that are only done in a given period of time during the year. And so by the time we got there, that one specific activity was not taking place. So that there is no way for us to verify that unless you have kept records of those activities. So, but record keeping, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing, especially for new applicants. I prefer to believe that it does get better. So it could be a struggle. I think it's just farmers are used to do farming, and so record keeping can be a challenge. But it's a requirement of the rule. So here are a few examples of some basic records that you will have to provide to the certifier, of course, maintain and provide to the certifier, such as the farm maps, land use history records. Like I said at the beginning, if you're submitting an application for the first time, you need to prove that that land was free of any prohibited substances for at least the last 36 months. And so that's what the land use history record will be useful for. And adjoining land uses, this is for those operators that have a neighbor that is managing a piece of land conventional and that there is some potential risk for contamination from that adjoining land. And so an adjoining land use document will be sufficient to prove that there are measures in place that will prevent that contamination from happening. Invoices for seed and transplants, farm activity logs, such as cultivation, weeding, planting, compost production records, harvest records, sales records, etc. Record keeping for livestock. Of course, feeding records. Livestock feed must be organic. That's the requirement of the rule. Organic verification of all purchased feed, harvest records as well. Breeding and birding records, invoices of organic certification for all purchased animals, livestock living conditions, pasture and grazing records, production records, and the list can go on. But now you don't feel like threatened by this long list, because these records will have to be compiled based on your situation, right? Based on what you are doing at your operations. So. We don't impose any templates, any specific records. You are the ones who make the decision which records will help you demonstrate compliance. And so there are some farmers that they just keep it all in one notebook, and that can be sufficient. And there are some others that show at this huge amount of records, but maybe not so sufficient in content. So it just depends on what you are doing. Record keeping for processors. Of course, organic certificate for each ingredient. If they are saying my processed product is 100% organic, we're going to talk more about the labeling categories later on. But if a product is labeled as a 100% organic and it's, let's say, a multi-ingredient product, well, all of those ingredients are expected to be or must be 100% organic. And so the way of demonstrating that is by submitting copies of the organic certificates for all of those ingredients. Clean track affidavits for bulk products. This is, again, to demonstrate that there is no possibility of contamination while the products are being transported. Ingredient usage reports. Ingredients flow in and flow out. They have to balance, right, with sales and production. So that's the idea here. The records is the best way to track what we call the audit trail, from the moment that the first ingredient came in, went through the process into the final product. Quality control records, inventory and packaging, product labels. Again, we're going to be talking. I'm going to show you some labels later on. And shipping records. Those are just some examples. Okay, and here are some odds and ends, or some of practices and procedures that I wanted to share with you before we move on to the next step, which is the inspection. So as you think of potentially becoming organically certified, here are a few things to keep in mind. People ask, do I have to use organic seed? The answer is, guess what? Yes. Okay. Unless equivalent variety is not commercially available. Commercially availability is a term that you can find at least a couple of times throughout the regulation. And that is good. And I think the reason why this was set up that way at the beginning is because, the industry, like I mentioned before, it's growing. At that time, it was. Now it's getting better. The ability to find organic seed is getting better, but at the time it was more difficult. So the rule does still allow for the use of conventional untreated seed or seed that has been treated with an allowed substance. But the condition is that you have to demonstrate that seed is not commercially available in an organic form. So that's one tip. What do I need to know about using manure and compost? There are some specific requirements for the use of raw manure, especially the timing when you are allowed to apply it to the soil. And then manure can be from any source. How do I know what materials are okay to use? This is another, when I was talking about record keeping, a second key item, or I would say problematic area within the certification process can be the approval of materials. Materials, or this is talking about inputs, are complex in nature because they can be different formulations for different purposes and usage. And so the operators are always struggling with trying to get the right answer of, is this material allowed? There is no organic certification for inputs. So there is not such a thing as organic manure or organic lime, but there is such a thing as lime that is approved to be used in organic production. So how do I know that? Well, PCO, very different from many other certifiers, we have a very advanced materials review program. We actually have a team of people, those 2 people who all they do is reviews of materials. And every year we issue what we call our materials list, which right now I think it contains about 2,300 materials that have been reviewed. And so that's one way. And then we also work with the Organic Materials Review Institute. This is an organization based in Oregon, who all they do is materials reviews, and just what they do is they verify that the materials are allowed and that are covered or are allowed based on the national list. And so any materials that are approved by OMRI, we also approve. We allow them. And there is actually another organization that I didn't list there, but there's WSDA, the Washington State Department of Agriculture. They have their own organic certification program, and within that program, they also have a materials review program. We also allow materials that are on that list. So, and when something to keep in mind is always before using any product that you have any doubts that whether or not it is approved, just contact your certifier. Don't make assumptions, because there are thousands of products out there that are allowed, and there are thousands of products out there that are allowed with a similar name or a similar phrase on their label, and then it is very, very easy to make mistakes just by failing to just pick up the phone and call the certifier and say, hey, can you verify that this material is okay? I don't have any dairy operators here, but just wanted to say that this year there is a new pasture rule that was published in February of 2010 and became effective in June 17 of this year. And pretty much just a quick summary of what this rule is all about. It's the idea of providing at least 30% of the dry matter intake from pasture to the livestock throughout the grazing season. So we want to make sure that livestock is now being confined and that is being fed pasture for at least 120 days in every year. So that's what this new pasture rule is all about. And okay, so moving to the 4th step, the inspection. I think we have a couple of potential inspectors in the room. PCO actually works with about 25 independent inspectors. So these are professionals who have been trained. There is an association called the Independent Organic Inspectors Association. Their primary function is to train inspectors on how to do organic inspections. So these individuals, they go out and at least, like I said before, once or twice a year, and they visit the facilities. They visit the farm, the processing facilities, the storage units, and They are, I like to refer to them as the eyes and the ears of the certification agency. So the inspector looks for indication that the producer is operating according to their organic system plan. Again, you submit the plan, that's all in writing, and the inspector takes that and just goes point by point on that plan and just verifies that the practices that are laid out on that plan are indeed implemented. The inspector will tour the entire operation or a portion of the operation, just depending on what the certifier's instructions are on any given year. Reviews the records and conducts an audit of those records and submits a written report to the certifier. After that, we compile that information, the inspection report and all the findings. We compare that with the organic system plan. And there is a group of certification specialists. They're all in this corner right here. This group here is the PCO certification team. And these individuals have been also trained on how to verify compliance with the regulation. And so they take all this paperwork, go through it, and make a decision on whether or not certification can be granted. That's how the PCO certificate looks like. Okay, now you're certified. Everything went really well. The inspector got there, good to go. Ready to go and represent those products and label those products as organic. So, okay, what's next? Is there anything else that we need to be verifying? And so there is the question, does it matter how my labels look like? Definitely yes, because that is what the consumers are going to be looking at. That's the image of your operation out there. So, and therefore, the labels have to be verified and approved by the certifier. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the three main labeling categories under the National Organic Program regulation. In the U.S., we have the category of 100% organic. We have the category of organic and made with organic. I think we have probably all seen these products labeled with these different categories in the market. This is a little bit different from other programs, such as the EU and Canada. In those countries, they don't have the 100% category. So our program is a little bit different in that respect. So what's all about the 100% organic? Well, it's what it is. It has to, all ingredients in that product must have been produced according to the rule and certified for that category. If, I don't know, let's say a spaghetti sauce, all the tomatoes and the basil and the spices and everything there, and it had to be 100% organic, so that tomatoes, that spaghetti sauce can be also labeled as 100% organic. What about organic? I'm sure that a lot of us here were like, organic, maybe we were thinking maybe that's 100, why not 100%? Well, according to the rule, products can be labeled as organic as long as 95% of the content in that product has been produced has been certified in accordance with the regulations. What about the remaining 5%? Any comments on that? Yes, that's correct. So it's not like that 5% were like signing a blank check. So yes, 95% of the agriculture and the ingredients had to be organically produced, and then the remaining 5 had to be not necessarily organic, but had to be on what we call the national list, which is a section of the rule.
What would be an example of one of those? What's an example of one of those 5% things that are okay on that list or that list?
Let me think. Vitamins, yeah? Yeah, there's a lot of things. By the way, when we're calculating the percentage, we exclude salt and water as well. So flavors don't have to be organic. Colors. Well, colors, they have to be on. They necessarily have to be organic, but they also have to be in another section of the rule. So And the made with, this is the category that the operators that are labeling products as made with organic, they need to make sure that at least 70% of those ingredients are organic. And then the remaining ingredients also have to be on the national list. So this is 70 compared to 95 compared to 100. It could be a little bit confusing, in my opinion, to consumers. But that's how it is. So make sure that when you're submitting your applications, even for products, let's say you are just packing some products coming up from that you're producing in your farm, and you're about to take it to the farmer's market, and you want to label it with the name of your farm. Make sure that even though you are not being certified, requesting certification as a process, or that you are submitting those labels, because we have to review those labels, make sure that they comply with the labeling categories. For labels, the USDA seal can be used on the labels, but it's not a requirement. But if you decide to use it, then we'll have to verify that you are using the right seal. It has to, there are two types. There is one that is with colors and another one that is black and white, and they will have to make sure that it looks exactly the same way, because the USDA, it's very strict in that respect. We don't want to be misrepresenting anything. So it's some of those details that is important to keep in mind. The name of the certifier has to also appear on that label. So the product has to say certified organic by, in this case, if it was by PCO. And the reason for that is if later on there is a complaint, let's say from a consumer in the market, we will have, and the NOP will have a way to trace that product back. And the first ones to be contacted with regards to that product will be the certifier or the distributor of that product. So labeling requirements are very important, and sometimes it's easy to miss those little details. And finally, this is my last slide. Some other things to keep in mind. Consider both ethical and strategic reasons to participate formally in the organic movement by getting certified. This is very important. The more people that join the industry, the more it consolidates itself. Realize that organic certifications is not only about doing the right thing, but documenting it. Going back to the record keeping part. Once you start following practices to get certified, they will become automatic in second nature. What I'm saying here is that it might seem a little bit difficult at the beginning. It's just an adjustment, but things get better. Plan ahead for your transition period, because again, if that land has not been managed without any prohibited substance for the last 36 months, then you will have to transition that land. Certifiers can give technical advice. We're just certifiers. So you might find a consultant useful to help you get started, because it's very common for us to get all these questions about, okay, you're talking about buffer zones. How wide should my buffer zone be? And we're like, we can't tell you that. What we can do is verify that the buffer zone that you have in place indeed will prevent contamination. But as far as it goes to how wide that buffer should be, that is the operator's responsibility. And I think it's good that the rule allows the operator to be able to make those sort of decisions and identify ways to eliminate risk and comply with the regulations. So it is always important to consider that there are resources out there that farmers have when it comes down to receiving some technical assistance. So that concludes my presentation. Now we can move on to the fun part, I think, which is more like addressing questions that you might have had, or have we gathered any so far? Or okay.
We're new farm, got to get certified, all that sort of stuff. And my question is, if you've got your farm and you've got vegetables and you've got 25 different varieties, does each of those 25 different types of vegetables need its own
certificate?
Not certificate, but the plan. In other words, you have, when you write out your farm plan, you have to say, a half acre of beets.
Yes.
What the yield is.
I mean, you will have to fill out a different form, but you had to tell us, okay, you had to give us the list of the crops that you requested certification for, and that changes every year, actually. So you had to give us just a list, but the plan is just how you're going to manage the operation overall. So.
Right. At the part of the plan was you'd have to come up with what the yield would be, expected yield for each thing, or it's just you have to just list what you're going to grow.
List what you're going to grow and the acreage. Okay. Yeah. That's pretty much.
Again, if it's 5 acres you're going to do, you've got to come up and say, well, I really don't know roughly it's going to be.
Yeah.
100 square feet will be.
I think as long as we can verify the list of crops and the area, and that should be sufficient. Yes.
I work for an organic feed company. We've been certified in a long time, so I might have more questions than the rest of these people. We answer too, but most of the questions. We just had a situation yesterday where we got a certificate for soybeans, and we buy roasted soybeans. And our buyer noticed that some of the brokers just had soybeans on their certificate, and others had roasted soybeans.
Yes.
Now, regarding your question, like on our farms, we grow crops, and sometimes the crop plan changes. Sometimes it changes suddenly because you get a drought or a failure of a fall crop, so you plant some oats or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen situations where, like, our mill was going to buy oats from our farms, but oats weren't on the certificate.
On the certificate, okay.
And yet, the whole system plan is there. What's your comment on that? Because I'm being asked to answer the question for the office. I think that roasting a product like the beans is a handling process that probably needs to be on there and certified, because you're no longer handling just a raw
Yes. Mm-hmm.
ingredient. But what about, because even with vegetable crops, you may get a seed failure. So, all of a sudden that crop fails, and you hear a demand from your CSA, well, we want some more of this in there. It's not on the sheet.
Okay. Certifiers use what we call the organic product listing addendum. At PCO, we call it the organic product verification. And that is a document that pretty much lists all the crops or products that have been certified, and also the processes. Because the certificate itself wouldn't usually show a list of specific crops or products, but that addendum should. If it is not in there, it's either because it hasn't been verified, or it was just not requested at the beginning of the season. But at PCO, throughout the year, we keep updating our organic product listing addendums. So does that answer your question, or how we, or?
Well, what happens, like in that case that I discussed, our company-owned farm,
Okay.
The oats weren't on their BJE farm certificate.
Okay.
They wanted to sell it to the company-owned mill, which two separate, legal entities, two separate organically certified entities, and the mill is looking at a truckload of oats out there, and we look at the certificate, and it has, doesn't say the generic term small grains, but they'll say wheat, barley, soybeans, and corn. So typically then we held up and wouldn't receive the oats, even though we knew, personally they probably were going to be okay.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm just thinking back to, I'm no longer in charge of certifying the mill ingredients. I've got a replacement, but for about 12 years I was involved in ingredients. And I would put as potential ingredients in our feed formulas anything that I would possibly use. Because sometimes you vary it a little bit. So if it could be in there, I'd run it past you guys.
Yes.
Say here's a potential formula with it.
That's what it sounds like. Is that what you should do? Anything you might grow?
Yes. Yes.
And that was acceptable.
Yes, and it is because remember that we're certifying processes, and products are part of that process. But as long as you can demonstrate that you can produce or handle that pool of products, we will give you a certificate for that. We have like brokers, for example. That we have brokers that all they have is the potential for sourcing certain ingredients. And so what we do is we verify that there's system in place. It's traceable enough so that we know that when the time comes where they actually had to source the ingredient or the product, they will request or they will obtain the necessary documentation, such as the organic certificates, the invoices, and when we get back there to do the on-site inspection, we will actually will be able to trace that back all the way back and not find any concerns or issues. So I don't know if that probably answers. Actually, I need to repeat the question, I think. From
now on.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
On our farm, we're certified for a large list of things that we might produce. One of the things in particular that I can think of will probably never be produced organically by us. But we leave it in our certification, and we have to sort of struggle with our certifier every year to get it left into our certification. Because, for example, this particular product is an organic veal. Our veal program doesn't run in our organic program.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if a calf that was in our organic program suddenly had to become veal, we want the right to be able to put that calf into the leave that calf in the organic program and label it as organic humane veal. And if we didn't ever have that, it probably never happened. But if we didn't have that in our certificate, which isn't exactly your question, but it's similar.
Robert, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just add on to your question. So if you run into a situation where in the original organic system plan, you had not listed that crop, and you run into a situation where during the season you find out you want to plant something else. We've had instances where some of our certified operators would call us because ultimately that product needs to be sold, which ultimately should be on the certificate because the consumer or the company is going to ask for it, the purchasing company. What we usually have them do is we have them submit information regarding the seed, and what's very important to us is the fact that it's a seed that is allowed. So information of the source of the seed, what seed they're using, and as long as they can also verify, we can verify that it's being planted on land that is already within the certified land, then we are able to move forward with adding it to their certificate. So there is a step that we do.
Yeah, thanks very much for. Now I was going to say too that we were actually last week in a training with the NOP, and this same kind of discussion came up because. Especially with processed products. Processors are sourcing ingredients for all sorts of different operators, and those operators are not all certified by one certifier. And so all of a sudden you are having to deal with different certificates and different formats. And we're discussing the idea of how to certifiers, we can think about a way of standardizing that format. Because even us in the office, we will have issues with processed product that came in with, one example that I was giving them last week was our processor was requesting certification for black mulberry juice. And he was listing black mulberries in the ingredients. And so we had to verify that those black mulberries that came from a foreign country were actually organic certified. And so, but the certificate that came with that formula listed only mulberries. And so we were like, well, but there are white and black mulberries. And so we were wondering, okay, so are the black mulberries indeed certified? So we contacted the certifier, and the certifier said, oh, no, we don't certify any black mulberries in that country. There's got to be. And so, and so it could be problematic at all ends. And so we're trying to do our best as certifiers to provide as much detail as we can. But in cases where it was the operator that not failed, but was not able to request a specific product at the beginning of the season, yes, please contact the certifier and work it out with us. And we will let you know what additional information we will need to be able to add that to that list of organic certified products. Yes?
The certification process, when you want to get into it, is there a certain time of year you should begin working on it, or is it an ongoing thing that could happen in the winter or the spring?
It could happen really at any time when you feel that you are ready. At PCO, we do have a certification cycle that we try to pretty much put everybody into the same cycle every year, just because if you are producing crops or livestock, we want to be out there when the land is not frozen. And so the best idea would be to try to have that inspection when we can actually perform it. But we receive applications all year round. There is no restriction on that. Yes?
What about water for watering the plants?
Okay, so the question is, I keep forgetting how to repeat the question. What about watering the plants? So are you wondering what type of?
Like a produce garden and you're using water from the spring.
We try to encourage people to do water testing, especially for crops. If the water is going to be contacting the final edible product, we want to make sure that it's free, of course, of any things such as E. coli and things like that. And so we as part of the monitoring practice, we ask the operators what monitoring systems you have in place to make sure that the water quality is there for the type of operation that you have, because it varies. It's not the same for livestock feed, for irrigating produce, for example. So, anything else? Any other questions? You have one more question?
I have one written down, but I didn't know it.
You can read it.
I don't know why I had to write it down. What does it take to satisfy the 36-month rule? If you buy a piece of property brand new from someone else that you know or don't know, or if you inherit, or if the property's been in your family for generations, what do you have to do to prove, or can you not do anything back?
Yes.
Retro. You just say, it belongs to me today, so I must start counting 36 months from now.
Yes, there is a way to do that, and I'm going to ask my staff to give them the chance to pitch in. Heather, Marissa.
It depends on if you know prior manager of that farm piece of land. So if you do know prior manager of the land, and you can have them verify that nothing has been applied for the past 36 months, and have them sign off on that, we call it a prior manager statement, attesting that nothing has been applied and prohibited, then we can accept that, and you can just pretty much be done immediately. But if you don't know, say you bought it at an auction or something, and there's no history that comes with that land, then you would have to transition for 46 months.
So I'm on a piece of property right now that the owner of the property has owned for generations. He would allow me to farm on it. If I can get him to just write a note and sign it that says I'm not sprayed or treated or done whatever is not permitted on this property for 10 years, I can start an immediate application and product.
You could, but it would have to be added to our system plan. We would also require an inspection of that piece of property.
Sure. But it is possible.
Yeah,
I don't have to wait 36 months from the moment it becomes mine.
I'm just going to repeat the question. And so the question was, what can be done when you are buying a piece of land or renting that you were not necessarily managing it for the last 36 months? Do you have to always transition, or is there anything else that you can do? The answer to the question is yes, you can do avoid the transition period if you can get the previous owner, the previous manager of that land to sign what we call a prior land use statement, I think is how we call it, stating that the land was managed without the use of any prohibited substances for at least the last 36 months. Yes.
If you have 100 acres, can you certify half of it and not the other half if you want to for every year?
Yes, you can do that. Yeah, you don't have to certify the entire unit. And like I said, I mean, the national organic standards do not have any restrictions when it comes down to what we call parallel production or production of conventional and inorganic. Or you can just manage everything organic and not necessarily have to certify everything. Because, for example, it usually happens with livestock. You might want to, you have maybe a market for organic milk, but not necessarily for products, or maybe your product is just for your own consumption. And so you can decide whether or not you want to include the products as part of your organic system plan, or just request certification for the livestock. Yes, you had some.
Are there any examples out there that give you good record-keeping tools, or are you just on your own, like using Excel spreadsheet or notebook? I mean, that's the problem I'm having. I don't see any standardization.
Yeah.
Kinds of tools out there that I think would make our lives easier and have to make your lives easier.
Yeah, I will say yes. Well, okay, let me repeat the question. The question is, are there any tools out there that provide support with record keeping, right? So anybody here that wants to help me out here with rest my voice for a little bit?
Yeah. There are organizations out there, like ATRA, I believe, would be one that do, and I believe the Rodale Institute also has some forms that they've created to sort of aid you in the process of record keeping. I'm sure there are multiple other organizations that would provide those, but a good place to start to look at those would be possibly the Rodale Institute or ATRA.
I don't know. Does NRCS provide those? Or that's more the technical aspect?
NRCS has records for pasture access and grazing, that kind of thing.
Also, we have some forms in the office that we give our producers and operators. You have the option of completing, and it actually helps us if you complete those standard forms.
Yeah.
But there is no rule that says you have to fill out our materials used form, that you have to fill out those specific documents. You need to report the information that we're asking for via all of those documents, but you could submit a record-keeping system that isn't necessarily the same one that we've developed, and as long as that has all the information that we're looking
that we
for,
need,
that would be acceptable.
Yeah, that's a good question.
That sounds crazy to me.
Yeah, the certifiers, because we had to maintain that distance between certifying and providing or consulting. So all we can do is propose some templates, and even the organic system plan itself. We have an organic system plan template for every category, but operators are not required to use that organic system plan. But most of them do. I would say all of them, at least in our experience, because they are pretty self-guided. It helps the farmer kind of like put into perspective what is that they need to submit. And every year we go through the process of updating those forms to adjust them to the rule and making sure that all the questions that need to be answered are being asked, and we are receiving the information that we need. It really facilitates the process, and it makes it less expensive as well, because when the inspector gets there, inspectors, they charge by the hour. So when the inspector gets there, the more adequate records that are in place and clear, the less time that the inspector will have to spend there, the more time that they will spend in actually visiting the sites and observing things, as opposed to just looking at numbers and trying to put calculations in place during inspection. So,
You mentioned that inspectors charge by the hour. What other costs besides, I know you said there's an application fee.
yes,
You could just go over that.
go over the fees. I mean, for PCO, our fees are structuring in three pieces, pretty much. When you apply, there is what we call an application fee, and usually that's when when you request an application package, we will send that to you. Then you will send that back to us with an application fee, and that is right now $75. And then there is, once you have submitted your application, we go through the review process of your organic system plan. There is a basic certification fee, and that is $660 right now, and that's only for the first year. The second year, right now, the renewal fee is $605, and there is no. That initial fee is just also for the first year. And then, and the third aspect of the fee structure for PCO is we do what we call a sales assessment. Every year, certified operators have to submit the gross sales, the amount of gross sales that they have of organic certified products. And so, there is a scale. I think it's from 0 to 100,000 is any help? 0.1%, and then from 101,000 to 200. So there is a scale, and so we apply a percentage of that. So that's what we call the sales assessment fee. So
there are other certifiers that are flat rate,
mm-hmm.
and there are other certifiers that are more expensive. But what you need to shop for, if I may,
yes.
is how much service and help you're going to need from your certifier.
Definitely.
You get what you pay for. You go to a flat rate certifier.
Okay.
That's what you're going to get.
Yes, and also just to now that we're talking about fees, there is a program called the Cost Share Program. That's a USDA program that helps alleviate the cost of certification. Right now, you can get up to $750 per category. So let's say you're applying for crops and livestock. Like dairy farmers, they have to apply for both categories because pasture is a crop. And so let's say they spend, I don't know, $1,000 or $1,500 in all of the certification fees. They can get up to $1,500 back from the USDA through the Cost Share Program. So that's a neat.
Has anyone had experience with that? Is that something simple to do?
Yes, and it works.
Yeah.
But it is reviewed and reapproved every year. So
Yes.
it might go away.
Exactly.
Might not be there.
Yeah. And I think that the way to keep it alive is by using it. Yes, becoming certified, but also even certified operators, for some reason, they fail to apply for it. And so it is a program that is out there. It's money that is being given back to the producers. And it's a promotional program. The government, the idea is to promote organic agriculture and help alleviate that cost of certification by reimbursing some of those expenses, that cost.
I administer the program for the state, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can answer that question.
Yeah, everything you said is correct, and I would say the same thing, use it. Our biggest problem is that we get 2 pots of money. One pot is $202,000 for producers, for all the producer scopes, and then we get $20,000 for the processing candidate scopes. And so we run out of money on the processing side nearly immediately. So it is not baseline funded, and everything that we're hearing right now from the Farm Bill talks is that anything that was not baseline funded in 2007 will probably not survive the 2012, 2013 Farm Bill. And we'll get around to pass it. So phone calls to USDA, phone calls to your congressman, congresswoman to keep the program in use, please do it. And you're right, 670, almost 700 applications mailed out every year. And if I get 35% back, it's a good year.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
There's a lot, there
Yeah.
are a lot of folks for religious reasons that cannot use the program. There are folks that choose not to. I get one application back every single year that says, please keep the government out of agriculture, but they never put their name on it. But, I mean, it's there, it's to be used, and right, the scopes thing, they threw that curveball at us about halfway through the cost share year.
Yes. Yes, because it was only $750, right? Like in previous years.
75% of your eligible certification.
Yeah.
$750. And pretty much all of your costs are eligible. The only things that are not would be late fees, or if you had a failed inspection and you have to be re-inspected, any of the costs associated with being re-inspected after failed inspection would not qualify. So that's pretty much it.
For clarification, you work for the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture.
Right.
You're administering the USDA one, or they're separate ones?
Right. We administer federal funds.
Okay.
Yes.
We're one of only 13 states that gets the money for the production side, the larger product money. Most states get the processing side. So we're pretty lucky in Pennsylvania to have the level of program that we have.
Do you want to say anything about how to apply and how that goes? Because they were like, is it easy to obtain or just briefly?
The form will change next year because the scopes thing caught me by surprise a little bit. They literally threw that midway. But typically I send out one form for producers, one form for the processors. It gets mailed out based on the list the USDA provides. On USDA's National Organics website, every certified operation with their address, contact information is all available on that website. So I download that website's Pennsylvania list and then mail out applications to that list. And then that tells me the scopes, it tells me your certification number so I can verify that you're certified. And then PCO very nicely provides me with the fees that you pay. So a lot of other certifiers that don't do that, you have to show me your records for fees. PCO provides that to me. So literally it's a one-page application, and I put a postage paid envelope in with the application, so all you have to do is stick the envelope in. This year, more likely than not, I will eliminate the two separate producer process applications and just make one single application where you circle the scopes or check off the scopes that you're under. So hopefully streamline that a little bit. And I try to find the most obnoxious colors possible, otherwise I lose the papers on my desk. When they come in like blaze orange and bright purple, don't get mad at me.
I was going to mention that we have some informational packages, and I believe there should be a cost share flyer there, right? With more information about the cost share program, about the process with PCO, and there's a nice bumper sticker and all sorts of good documentation there in that info pack. Feel free to take one with you or more if you wish. And I was also just going to mention that PCO, for the first time ever, is launching a farm fest this summer here in Pennsylvania. We are expecting that it's going to be great. The Farm Fest is going to take place in the Grange Fair grounds. I don't know for those who are not familiar with this area, but this is where the Grange Fair is this camping out type of fair that happens here in Pennsylvania, has been happening for many. I'm pretty new to the area, so I'm not the best one to describe the event. But anyways, we will be sending more promotional material out there in the months to come. But it's going to take place August 3rd and 4th. So save the date. We're going to have great music, great workshops, organic vendors, and so you're all welcome to come back to Central PA for the Farm Fest. If there are not any more questions, are there any more questions that?
So you're saying for the certification fee is basically roughly $1,500 for the 36-month period?
Well, it just depends of what category you are. You were looking to do like what crops?
Crops
and livestock. Livestock, I think, $1,200 pretty much. Your typical.
For the 36 months preceding your transition time, you don't have to.
Yes, that's just.
When you're ready to be certified is when you actually apply, and that's when you
So
yeah.
About $600 every year from there on.
Well, it will be, you had to add the basic certification fee, which is $660, and then you have your inspection fee, because the inspector will have to go out there, and that's a separate fee, and then that fee that you have to pay based on your sales. And so I think from experience, about 40% of our membership is dairy operators, and I think on average will be around $1,200 or so when you add up all those fees for a typical, I don't know, medium-sized herd, whatever that is in this region. So.
There's also a copy of the fee schedule in the information packet, which explains it all.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone has more questions or anything like that, feel free to call the office, and Williams, our specialist, will be happy to talk to you. We have a booth downstairs.
Booth number 116, I think, is it?
I think 16.
And actually, Heather Donald, our moderator for today, she's our new client specialist. So if you call the office, she will be the one who will be talking to you and guiding you through the process and answering questions, and even like going through that OSP and making sure that every single question is filled out. And so just feel free to call in. Anything else? Well, thank you everyone for coming today, and I hope that I will hear you or see you or in the near future, and hope that we can serve your organic certification needs in the near future as well. Thank you very much.